Right then, I'm alive. Oh, there's something yellow. Let's see if... Is this working? Hello! Right then. Hello everyone. Yeah, I can hear you. All is well. That is good. That is what I like to hear. So then I can just turn that now to a massive, massive thing. Good evening, Jay. So, can everyone hear me? Hello. Right, I'm going to say hi to Anne and Louise, because I think you're both watching. So, hello. Good evening, Jay. Good evening, Mr. Richardson. Good evening, Stephanie. Good evening, Stephen. Good evening, Carl. Good evening, Nathan. Good evening, Paul, Jay, Stephen, Tony, Richard. Hello. It was a pleasure to recommend Battlefleet Studios channel. They're a lovely channel. Well, you're a lovely channel. It's a lovely channel. Hello, Carl. Hello, Raphael. So, I am a Mr. Richardson. I always thought you were a Mr. Richardson, Jay Richardson, but, you know, I'm not quite sure. It's like Blue Shirt Buddha, to be honest. I have a suspicion Blue Shirt Buddha is a gentleman, but, you know, he might not be. And then there's Stephen Conroy. Hello, Stephen. Hello, everyone. I see torpedo boats. We all do. First thing first, before I get into everything, I'm going to go with Gunboats at War by Leonard C. Reynolds. Forward by Admiral of the Fleet, Lord Lewin. It's a really, really cool book. And what I like is it has not only the pictures, and I take it forward, but it has some of the things they got up to, the people in there, and the realities of what they were dealing with, and their various operations. And they were really having quite a lot of fun. It has some very detailed plan drawings as well. Hello, Greg. If you are planning on doing some modelling in terms of these torpedo boats, this is definitely a book to have got, because whilst it doesn't have colour photos in, it has pretty much everything else. And honestly, if you are informed enough to be sort of looking at this sort of book for your modelling, you'll probably be doing it quite well. Right then. Dr. Clark, not as bad as the Russian 2nd Pacific Squadron. We always see mines. Right, so I have been getting quite a few messages already coming through about the introduction. Part 2 will be recorded probably tomorrow morning, honestly. I've got a huge amount of marking to finish off tonight. The lovely Excel spreadsheet that all the marks have gone in has decided to corrupt, and all the marks are due in tomorrow. Fun times. But frankly, this is my time off from marking, so I'm enjoying it. I'm going to be here for a while. Also, if you're in the UK, it's 9 o'clock tonight on the Discovery Channel, Mysteries of the Deep. I'm on it again. God help us all. So, it's Littleships of the Big War. Not an introduction, though. But, you know, I print out the same slides for both because it makes sense. Now, the interesting thing about it, and the great interesting thing that we're all sort of talking about, is the different rules. So, for what is a little ship? And, well, its article comes down to Article 8 of the 1930 Naval Treaty. Jay Richardson, I don't have a TV license. Well, I'm probably going to get in trouble with the BBC for this, but it's the Discovery Channel that's able to be got on Amazon Prime as catch-up. So I don't know if you need a TV license to watch catch-up television on Amazon Prime. And that has Mysteries of the Deep on it. It has both the American and the British first episode of the series as well on that. So, Article 8 of the 1930 London Naval Treaty. Subject to any special agreements which may submit them to limitation, the following vessels are exempt from limitation. A. Naval surface combatant vessels of 600 tons, 610 metric tons, standard displacement and under. So, if a vessel's under 610 tons, it doesn't matter. There are no limits on it. Whatever you can pack in for that 610 tons, you can build as many as you like. B. A naval surface combatant vessels exceeding 600 tons, but not exceeding 2,000 tons. Remember, the limit of a destroyer is 1850. Standard displacement, provided they have none of the following characteristics. 1. Mount a gun above 6.1 inch caliber. 2. Mount more than 4 guns above 3 inch caliber. 3. Are designed or fitted to launch torpedoes. And 4. Are designed for a speed greater than 20 knots. Evening, Carl. Evening off license. So, what I will tell you is this. There is a spate of ships after 1930 which somehow have a maximum speed of 20 knots, weigh 2,000 tons, and officially cannot carry are not fitted with any gun bigger than 4 3-inch guns. The Royal Navy didn't go quite in for that, because the Royal Navy could build enough regular destroyers, it wasn't really worthwhile their effort. If you can build cruisers, enough cruisers and this sort of things, once you're building 2,000-ton ships, that's going to impact on your destroyer construction. However, 600-ton ships, well, that's motor torpedo boats, that's trawlers, that's all sorts of things you're able to build. Now, it's basically Articles 8 and Articles 15, which are the important articles. And they're always worth considering. You will see it if you go to the introduction video. That's displayed for far longer there, and you can have a good read through it. I always love the naval treaties because... Okay. The first thing you'll read is, and if you read something like John Jordan, who goes into it very, very honestly, and you can tell John Jordan is a very nice, very honest person. He goes into it, he's reading through it, and he sees it all as a load of restrictions upon what you can do. And he's looking at it and he's going, it's this, it's complicated, and he looks at the very surface way of how they get round it. You have to consider that perhaps the person writing the rules was going to write it in so what they were going to do was legal, and so that the legal course of action suited what they wanted to do. The reason the British appear to not break the rules so often as other powers do is because they had largely managed to write the rules in many ways to suit their plans and their methodologies. So basically, this is why you want to be in the top tier in the world, because you get to write the rules. And if you get to write the rules, you can write them in such a way that it makes you always be perfect and completely innocent, because you've written the rules, so you are innocent. Steam White, Asiatic riverine ships governed by the same limit. Yeah, pretty much. No, he tended to hire them. He had quite a few lawyers working for him. Stephanie Wilson. Unexpected consequences of trying to write down restrictions can be entertaining. It is. It's brilliant. As anyone who has ever... I regularly have to, for various schools I coordinate when I do the Joy of Summer School for A-level and GCSE kids. I adapt the rules of basically football and basketball, so that if I've got kids who, let's say, have handicaps, etc., I will adapt the rules so they can play and will still be able to be part of it. So there'll be a sort of Justin Craig rules set. And it's fun when you start looking at the rules and start having to write down and adapt them. Off license, pre-radar, the small boats gave navies situational awareness. I wouldn't want to be on one in a fight. Okay. Think of your small boats as ambush predators in short ranges. You might not want to be in them a fight, but the whole point is that if you have a scenario where you're taking on a squadron or of the enemy, you should be turning up in dark with dozens of them. That's the whole point. It's not a case of you turn up and it's one-on-one. It's supposed to be mass-on-one. Now, we can all say this is all the school of June de Cole, and the fact that it doesn't really work like that because the enemy doesn't tend to play ball. But there are reasons for having them. There are reasons for having them. And they do sometimes manage to get some successes. So, I used the Abdeel class mine-laying cruisers as my example to go through and explain the rules. And the reason I use them is because they really aren't cruisers, they are mine layers, but they're called cruisers. They're called cruisers because, despite only displacing 2,650 tons standard load, they are too much to fit into under Article 8B, and they can't fit in the destroyer category. They have a speed of 40 knots, which means they're too fast for Article 8B as well. And they mount many 4-inch guns, not the 3-inch ones. So again, they have too many guns. So, despite, frankly, there not being cruisers at all, they are classed as cruisers. And you have other ships which also fit that target, that sort of role. And, you know, the Royal Navy, when they're looking about building its mine-laying ships and its mine-laying capacity, which is important for the Royal Navy, offensive mine-laying is a critical capability the Royal Navy's worried about. They have submarines, they have surface ships, they have it all. These ships are it, but they're cruisers. Martin Symes felt sorry for trawlers, had to do minesweeping, convoy escort, patrol boat, and then catch supper. Yeah, pretty much. They had fun. That is the fluffy research assistant saying hi to someone who just pressed the doorbell. God help them. They're just about to be hugged to death. Chailingworth. Dogboat commanders are destroyer commanders on energy drinks. Actually, usually what dogboat commanders were young officers who would have been a destroyer commander, certainly later in their career, but they were given the rank of lieutenant, or sometimes more junior than that, would be given command of a boat and told to go find the enemy and don't come back till they're not found. So, the Basset class. Arguably one of the most important ships ever built. Jeff Beeler, hello all. Did you get your homework done? Well, I hope you all did watch it. So, the joy of the Basset class, and I do love this one, is that they are less than 600 tons. They have a speed of 12.5 knots, which is completely fine for keeping up with merchant ships. And they have a crew of 33. Mostly it's the Royal Indian Navy, which has a crew of 48. I'm not sure why. Right, so, Jeff Beeler, no, Prime Flux. MTBs are great for learning boat handling. Much cheaper to repair when you screw up. Yes, pretty much. Plus, you know, motor torpedo boats have other advantages in that honestly, they're almost disposable assets. It's kind of the same thing as landing craft. You don't want to lose them, but if they do get lost, it's not going to cause you to worry too much. You're not risking the fate of the nation if one of them gets destroyed. So you can go and roll it. Ian comes. Good evening. Dan Freeman, an MTB or similar akin to an early platoon command for a junior officer before moving up to a tribal? Actually, the MTB would be basically, it's not even before they move up to a tribal or a destroyer. It's their lieutenants. They are the, junior rank. If they went to another destroyer, another ship after this, they maybe get promoted to lieutenant commander, maybe put in charge of a corvette or something like that. But probably they'd first go and become an XO of another ship. Hello, Blue Shirt Booger. Thank you. So, you have these things coming in. And the Basset class are that. They are, in many ways, the scariest thing for a submarine to see coming their way. Because they were often fitted with ASDIC. They were often very capable of using their ASDIC. And you have the problem if you are a U-boat. Because this is 600 tons and is not what I should be killing if I'm a U-boat. Because this isn't going to cost the Royal Navy anything really to replace. But if I don't kill it, it can kill me. If I get caught on the surface by it, it can kill me. It's got depth charges to drop on me. Either way, it can be a mission kill for me fighting this thing. It's basically the risk fleet strategy attached to convoy escorts. And if anyone wants an idea what the future version of these are going to be, there's a very, very nice five-hulled automated unmanned surface vessel, a pentagram, I think it is called, which is going around. That's probably it. Right. Jeff Beeler, E-boat scaled down, but destroyer replacement. We're going to get to E-boats. Seamite, sounds like Lieutenant Cushing exploit going up Alma River to sink the ironclad Alma with steam-powered launch. Yeah, pretty much. These things are descendants of the spar torpedo boats. In the nicest way, and motor gunboats are so the torpedo boat destroyers of their generation. The destroyers have now got so big they're not for the role anymore. So you take a motor torpedo boat, you add a load of guns, it becomes a motor gunboat. It's now a motor torpedo boat destroyer. Trentrenko, what was the real difference between MTB and MGB in the Royal Navy? USN, P-boats and torpedoes and guns and guns and guns. Pretty much. If we take, and I just want you all to look at this. This is a minesweeper called the Admiral class of the US Navy, and apparently it has a crew of 104. A crew of 104 on a minesweeper. Please, I'm hoping that is a mistake in the book. I really am hoping it's a mistake, because 104 for a minesweeper is not a good idea. Right, we'll stick them over there. So, the difference between your gunboat and your torpedo boat in the Royal Navy is, well, if they happen to be a fair mile versus a Vosper, the difference is about another 64 tons. That is the thing. It's, this thing is, the torpedo boat, the gunboat is carrying 2 single 6-pounder guns, 4 20mm Oricons, mounted in 2 signals and 1 twin, 2 twin Vickers K guns, 4 light boat depth charges. The motor torpedo boat is carrying either 4 18-inch torpedoes, 1 20mm Oricon and 2 Vickers, or 2 18-inch torpedoes, 1 quick-firing 6-pounder gun, 1 20mm Oricon cannon, and 2 Vickers K machine guns. They are heavy. They are well loaded to bear. Bandholm, that's insane. I presume you're talking about my favourite Minesweeper. Yes, 104 people. Actually, no, let's just go back quickly to the USS Admiral, because she is an interesting ship. Right. So, this particular sardine can is only 625 tons compared to the 529 tons of this. So, she's 100 tons more. Okay? 100 tons. This has a crew of 33. This has a crew of 104. This carries 1 3-inch 50 caliber gun, 4 40mm Bofors, 6 20mm Orlicons, 1 Hedgehog anti-submarine mortar, 4 depth charge projectors and 2 depth charge racks, 2 minesweeping paravines. Honestly, if we want a current example of why the LCS has turned out like it is, here's the reason. Okay? This is supposed to be a minesweeper. It has been turned into a minesweeper, a gunboat, and an anti-submarine boat in one. Everything's been stuffed in it, along with 104 crew. And its top speed's 15 knots. Its length is 56.24 meters, compared to the Basset's 48.92. So I suppose it is about 6.5 meters longer. Its beam's 10 meters versus the Basset's 8.26 meters. And its draft is 3 meters to the Basset's 3.23 meters. But still, you're supposed to be taking this into a minefield. A minefield. Martin Symes, that's a Type 15 frigate. Pretty much. In fact, there are frigates which are going around World War II perfectly happy carrying less weapons than this thing. What's really funny is this is the Regia Marina equivalent. 207 tons. Speed 13 knots, complement 21. Draft of only 2.2 meters. Hi, King's Rook. It's a lovely thing to be in, really, if you're in the middle of a war zone. Schleppy42, I hope I have not missed too much. No, you haven't, don't worry. Go big or go home. Look, again, it's a minesweeper. Daniel Freeman, Wikipedia says one of the Admirals is a museum ship in Omaha, Nebraska, if anyone is near there and can have a look at it. I would recommend go have a look at it. If you're close to, go have a look at it. Snappy42, I do sometimes wonder if the USN likes guns that expose a little too much. Well, we're going to concentrate on the Americans for a bit. We will concentrate on the Americans for a bit. Because, you know, the Electric Launch Company patrol boat, patrol torpedo boat, or the PT boat, right? 326 of these produced. And they displace 57 tons. They have a length of 24 meters. A beam of 6.3 meters and a draft of 1.7 meters. By the way, there is pretty much a golden ratio which starts to appear between 4 and 5 to 1 of length to beam is what produces a very, very good very good boat in terms of torpedo boat or gunboat. So a length of between 4 and 5 to 1 is what you're sort of looking for. And it depends, the exact ratio depends on the hull shape you're going for and what kind of speeds you're aiming for. This particular PT Boat 109, as commanded by Lieutenant John F. Kennedy, even though it has been fitted with 4 21-inch torpedoes, 1 20mm cannon, 2 twin Browning machine guns and 1 37mm cannon, which was nicked off the Japanese, can do a speed of 41 knots officially. So, let me start by explaining why I keep going officially when I'm talking about the speeds, and why at no point have I mentioned ranges. Okay, so there is no other type of vessel where I have ever had the joy of looking into, barring perhaps some of the Royal Navy aircraft carriers, where the range is discussed, the official range, has so little bearing to the real range in life. So in simple terms, what a lot of British, American, German, pretty much any commander would do, and Italians really, really love this, would strap fuel tanks, extra jerry cans or full barrels of fuel onto their boats, onto their little ships. And they would use the fuel from them first. They would have that being fueled, and that would be on the top of the basically on the top of the ship. And the moment they cleared for action, if they saw there was a threat or anything, they would kick them off the side, get them off of weight. You know, it didn't matter if there's any fuel left in them or over, they just got rid of them. But this means that the reality is, if I start quoting ranges to you, I'm going to spend my entire time going, the official range is, boom. The real range is however much fuel the commanding officer managed to blag. And it could be very, very different. Now, I'm not saying there weren't officers who did always play by the rules and never did this. But there were a lot who did. Now, the question you have, of course, is how much fuel can you afford to have before you start getting a risk if you're under attack by air and all these sort of things. The trick is to have it on some sort of quick release system, and by gum are they doing a lot of quick release systems. But the thing is, it's like the 37mm on the PT-109, which John F. Kennedy has, because that 37mm isn't supposed to be fitted, but it's borrowed. Some reckon it comes from a Japanese gun, some reckon it's an American tank gun, which they've found. Either way, somehow they've got their hands on a 37mm. Could be John Kennedy used his charm and managed to, I don't know, get it off someone. Either way, they get it. They've got it. And it's the same with fuel. So, when you're discussing ranges of these torpedo boats and motor gun boats and motor torpedo boats and all these ships, you start to get really, really into an interesting area. Kevin Taggart, thank you. Hello, book question for you. What do you think of Corbett's Maritime Operations Volume 1 and 2, as I just picked them up? I have them. I can't currently see them, but I do have them, and they're very good. I've enjoyed reading them quite a lot over the years. They're very much more a history than a what do you call it? A theoretical book, but they are a very good history. Anyway, so back to the lovely patrol boats. Could it be a 37mm Oldsmobile gun from a wrecked P-39 Air Cobra, Calvin Carlsberg? It could be. Honestly, no one knows. No one really knows. And they just get a 37mm and it gets fitted. It's like there is a... I think it's one of there is one of these which apparently during the war, one of these which managed to get two 2,000 horsepower Griffin aero engines stuck in it somehow. I'd like to know where they managed to get the Griffin from, but apparently it just turned up and they were fitted in. B, again, they managed to get a whole Griffin engine. Okay? That is the sort that's being used inside a late model Spitfire. They get 2 of them and stick them in this. So in the nicest way, the odds of it only getting to 29 knots are very unlikely. Oh. Right. Okay. It's just, it's just fun. What was the Jeff Beeler? What was the impact of Italian MTB operations on other countries' MTB programs? Well, here's the thing: when the Italians start the war, their MTBs are frankly terrible. But then they get the designs of the Schnell boot, they Italianize it to a great extent, and the thing that they produce is absolutely, really rather good. At which point the Royal Navy get a bit annoyed with them and start having the destroyers go in and start killing a lot of them. But remember, it's not just, as I did in the introduction, it's not just the regular torpedo boats as we would consider torpedo boats you have to think about when you're talking about the Italian torpedo boats. There's also the Speaker class, and we'll get onto them in a bit. And their similarities. Chevy 42, as Dr. Slark, as Drax says, there's a space on your deck. Put a gun there. Yeah, but still, it's just interesting. Bailey and Noro, Robert Massey's Dreadnought and Castle Steels, are they any good? They're good reading history. They are good starts of history. You've got academic books for the more precise details, but for a good flow and getting a good overall picture, they're a good start. Robert Massey is. Okay. Bound home. Sailors and soldiers have an interesting ability to find stuff that just happens to be laying around. Yeah, that. 2 Griffin engines, okay? Griffin engines, top of the line fighter engines. 2 of them. Angus, destroyer captains have to be aggressive. PT captains have to need to be resourceful. Yes, but they do need to be resourceful. I think the old expression, probably from many junior lieutenant, is, Chief, we have a problem. I'm now going down the pub. I'm sure it'll be fit. Carry on, Chief. And then the Chief Petty Officer probably deals it. Because remember, most of these boats were put together. They would have a junior officer in charge who's a lieutenant who might have 2 or 3 years. Maxim might be just straight out of Dartmouth. Honestly, some of them were. And probably a Chief Petty Officer who might well have 10 to 15 years experience, who have come most likely from destroyers. That is the balance going into the ship. That is the balance coming into it. Hello, Nick. You missed the sweepers, but we'll probably get back to them in a second. At the moment, I am scaring people with the... where's it gone now? Where has the scariest... The vessel that you could guarantee if I was offered a chance on, I wouldn't go on anywhere near a war zone. Yeah. The Admiral class, Nick. 104 crew and more firepower than most frigates. Not sure I'd take that into a minefield. It's fun what they're doing. Jeff Beeler, I think PT-109 had a US 37mm anti-tank gun with a shield and wheels removed. Hand-loading single shot. Yeah, that is definitely the most popular theory. But there are some others which go around about it. That's definitely the official and most popular one. But I wouldn't like to say 100% because frankly, I think if anyone could find something more interesting, John F. Kennedy probably could. Okay. Carlos, by the way, in recent years, less than 10, there was a case if stolen aircraft engines, F-15 engines, from an Israeli base. Ooh. Yeah, but imagine the F-15 engines powering your motor torpedo boat. Actually, now I had a thought. Imagine if you could get those sort of engines to power, you know, his Draconis' ship Thunderchild. I'll have to have a chat with Drac about that. See if we can't use F-15 engines. Oh. Kevin McTaddock. Well, what do you expect when you have a what-if scenario? Best of traffic? Yes, pretty much. Prime Flux. I'm just happy we still have 4 torpedo boats sailing around as museum ships here in Sweden. That is rather nice. In the UK, we don't have pretty much any. JNF, the dog boat probably ended up working with the Abdiels. A need for speed. Yeah, the Abdiels. The interesting thing, the unofficial record I have for the Abdiels from a tribal class destroyer was they were doing 37 knots, which a tribal class is not really supposed to be able to do, but they were managing to do 37 knots. And the Abdiel class overtook them, and their estimate was around about 48 to 49 knots. Pretty much the Abdiel class was as close to a ship that size gets to flying as it can do. Those things were basically engines with hulls attached. That is how the Royal Navy built the Abdiel class. Vincent van der Devine, how long did it take to construct a torpedo boat? How does it compare to destroyer? Not that long. It doesn't. Most of them are made of plywood, and they're very quick. We're talking weeks to construct if you've got a skilled crew. At the most. Mostly the long lead items, the engines are more difficult to organise, but you know, you can get there. Jeff Beeler, US boats would get slower and slower in the field. No way to script hulls. Yep. Again, officially. Unofficially, they found if they ran them across coral, they could clean their hulls quite well. It would do a horrendous damage to the coral, so in the nicest way, yep, no. But they tried it, and it worked okay-ish. Tim Pebble, Griffin engines just fell off the back of the truck, probably. Greg Stalsky, and so far, re-requisition. Tony Curtis character in Operation Petticoat, if you haven't seen it. Yes, I have. Yeah. That would explain quite a lot. Rackstraw, the most dangerous thing you can tell a Chief Petty Officer. I don't care how you get it done, make it happen. Oh, do you know what? Here's the thing. I have never met a poor retired Chief Petty Officer. They have developed some finely honed skills when they leave the Navy. For acquisition and redeployment of assets to a most proficient usage. Companies pay big bucks for them. Jeff Beeler, sea conditions slow everyone down. Why big females could hold their own in spite of being technically slow? No, the big females could hold their own despite being technically slow because they weren't as technically slower as people like to make out. They leave the thing being able to do 23 knots. By the time most of their crews have finished playing with them, they're getting up to 30 knots. And then if there's in rough seas, they can have a lot of fun. The fact is, the Schnell boat has a lot of issues. Usually they max out at about 100 tons in weight, and honestly, the Schnell boat or E-boat is it's one of those systems which has a lot of history around it, and so it's very highly rated because of that history, because of the successes it did achieve, quite rightly so. But technically, it doesn't really like rough seas, bad weather, all sorts of things, and it can get it's a perfect machine rather than a machine which can take world which isn't quite perfect. Yeah, Prime Flux, yes, boats are diesels, right? I think they were, yes. I think. Next, Stanley, every ship is a minesweeper once. That might explain the Admiral class, then, if that's the American policy, but seriously, they didn't build enough of them for that. And they have a crew of 104. Who sent a crew of 100? Oh. Okay, Jeff Beeler. Engines need replacing through wear and tear. If Griffins were available, use. I'm sure that's what the Royal Navy High Commands decided when they found out, but I'm not sure if that's the reason they were fitted. And usually engines are replaced one at a time, not both at once. Because usually you're replacing them on the same engine as you got on the other side, so, they should work, but, anyhow. Benedict Borland, couldn't we get a talk about Cold War missile boats? We have in Germany kept ours pretty long. Yeah, I like the Cold War missile boats. Me and they're a lot of fun. Kevin Tiger, fun times until you hit a wake. Well, as I said in the introduction, one of the cruel tricks that the Fairmiles would do to a schnell boat if it was going at top speed would be, if they could with radar line the intercept up so much that they could get in front, they'd drop their depth charges and then they'd start basically firing and then drop their depth charges, and so the thing would go in trying to avoid the firing and would run into the depth charges going off, boom boom boom, and the schnell boat which pretty much doing this. And by the time the crew are compos mentis again, they've had so many shells, the boat's sinking. It's rather a cruel, but a very effective trick. Oh. Right, Dana Freeman. Anthony Clark, borrow the F-15 engines from up. That could be interesting. I think, honestly, we could come up with a good use of those engines for HMS Thunderchild, his Drax ship, Thunderchild. Jennifer, Addos Clark, remember the Scimitar class, 2 are Rolls-Royce Olympus engines rated at 70 knots. Yep, it works. It's a very useful system if you can get enough speed. Benedict Browning, talking about naval minesweepers and mine layers. Naval mine warfare is very undercovered. Could we get talked about development of naval mines to the point? Yeah, happy to do that. In fact, here's the interesting thing. The first naval mines start off in China in, I think it's the early Ming Dynasty they used. They put explosives. Right, as you all know, I drank about 20 litres of iron brew this weekend, writing and finishing off the book. I am being very good. So I am having water, since I'll be back on the iron brew tomorrow regularly, but I have the water served in my lovely iron brew bottles, so it's still iron brew to me. Not the same, but I'm, still keeping the faith. Banham, the NCOs from the Navy are always specialists. My former captain on one of the ships I served on said that he would trade a petty officer for every officer, including the chief engineer. More than likely. Cal Ganlon, I think they were more escort than minesweepers, like the Canadian Bangor and Algeria. To be honest, the American Navy and the minesweeper is kind of interesting. I haven't done the Halcyon class because, frankly, I did them in the sloops talk, and I'm going to be doing more about the sloops. So, I thought I'd leave them there, and it's much the same with the Bangor class. They're sloops. And there are so many trawlers. The trawlers are going to be fun. They're going to be in part 2 of the introduction. Richard Hughes, you need a crew of 104 so you have replacements when you drag them through the water to get the mines. Possibly. Char 11E5 So I presume Charles. And the 52-knot Brave class with 2 times rover. Guess what? Yep. Oh. It's speed. Sammy, Canadian Bangors mainly did escort work as well. Yeah, it's... You find things like the Halcyon class Minesweepers. You have them sitting up in, especially up in the Arctic, and the British are operating them out of Archangel to escort in the convoys over the final way. So they're there to stop any mines dropped by the lovely German planes or any submarines. They're there to help escort the convoys in the final way. Jeff Beeler, E-boats expensive for role. Germans needed smaller, cheaper MTBs like the ones used on raiders. The thing was, the German E-boats were... The thing I have with the German Navy is they produce very perfect but very inefficient designs. You know, as me and Drac possibly have both admitted in the past, one reason we bonded is because we're both very, very certain that the Bismarck is one of the most inefficient battleship designs ever developed. But leaving that to one side, the Schnell boat is also inefficient. It's like, yes, lovely, it's got 2 torp launchers and it carries 2 reloads, but this one, the Vosper 73-foot Type 1, carries 4 torpedoes. Or its Type 2 carries 2 torpedoes, all ready to launch, but also carries a 6-inch six-pounder quick firing gun. So, in the nicest way, yes, technically the Schnell boat is theoretically the better ship. It is considered a better ship, but honestly, this will go 40 knots, more than 40 knots. This will go 45 knots in good weather. And this is 100 tons, this is 45 tons. So for the same tonnage and a lot less work, I can have 2 or 3 of two of these and 1 of these. Well, I know that I prefer to have the 2 of these. I haven't run out of Iron Brew. I have got plenty, but I'm still clearing out the bottles from the weekend. I am still clearing out the bottles from the weekend. This is the thing. This is how much I drank finishing off. Trent Telenko, the final wartime standard PT armament was 4 Mark 1 sliding launch racks for torpedoes, 2 times twin 50 minutes, and a lot more than that. 1 times... World War I Italian MTBs sank a couple of battleships, including the Sven Ismail. Yes, the World War I Italian MTBs were very, very good. The World War II initial ones were not so good. Mainly due to their engines, I think, is what I've been reading it, and there's different solutions given and reasons for it given, and I'd go for the engines. Usually the nicest way, if you have a small ship going wrong, it's the engines. Jeff Miller, World War I UK MTBs laid waste the Kronstadt in 1919. World War I UK motor torpedo boats were very, very useful. And they kept them up during during the interwar years, though they never had as many as they tried to make out. Okay, so there's an old story which goes round, which I will not tell you whether it's true or not. I'll let you figure it out. The Royal Marines, of course, have all these sort of little boats, these various, semi-rigid inflatable fast boats, little things. And they have Royal Marines painted on the top. Well, apparently, if they roll over, you'll find parachute regiment painted on the hulls. Just so everyone, so that the photographs, if they go belly up, are not with Royal Marines in the symbols. Now, the thing is, what the Royal Navy did with its torpedo boats is they confused the life out of pretty much everyone, including their own allies, by keep changing their numbers on very regular occasions, and sometimes very irregular occasions, and sometimes so often they weren't even quite sure themselves what numbers their boats were. So, these things were fun. Right then, let's go on to... Kevin Tone, I'm sorry I missed the intro video. Really want to know how they blew up mines. Well, they had various Paravine minesweeping gear, and the idea was usually you have their hope is that they're shallow enough draft they can go across the top, and they would tow something behind, rather like a trawler, and that would scoop up the mines, and the mines would get funneled into it and would blow themselves up. You also had sort of various gears which you could swing out of sides, sort of like trawlers, and you could do quite a big coverage. Minesweeping versus modern mine countermeasures is very, very different, but it's effective. It was used in World War One, and it does work. It's just it's not very safe for the crews, and crews either get very good or they get very dead very quickly. Silic, I've read in the past how USN miners use clear channels in front of landing beaches. Would that help explain the Admiral class design? Possibly. You know, in nicest way, no. Though, in nicest way, if it's clearing the beaches, it doesn't want to be involved in a firefight. You'll have other ships giving it fire, cover and fire. I think it's just a natural tendency that some design houses and some constructors have a natural tendency to just keep chucking stuff on. And you have to sort of think, do we really need this? Do we really need the crew that are going to need to man this? Because if you have all those guns, you need to man those guns. It's just non-stop. Okay. King Snook. So those fuel tanks strapped onto the PD boats were naval versions of aircraft drop tanks. Yeah, then. Yeah, pretty much. In fact, that's arguably where the idea of the aircraft get the drop tanks from. But it works. It really does give them extended ranges, but this means that it's very difficult for you to say, okay, this vessel has this range. It's like, this vessel has this speed. It has this speed officially and this range officially. The reality... Benedict Borlin, did the Japanese use Littleships, or did I just miss the Japanese boats in the introductory video? They're in the part 2. They didn't really have ones I liked for the part 1. Basically, I was picking 3 for each. And it does look a little Anglo-American centric, I will admit, at the beginning, but that's because it gets balanced out later, and the Italians really do come strong in later. Japanese come strong in the trawlers. The Japanese do have a lot of trawlers that they use for things, and basically the Japanese trawlers are converted to all sorts of things. Cargannon. Then what happened when you have a 25-year gap? That's what happens when you have a 25-year gap in naval design. I presume you're talking about the Italian motor torpedo boats. And yes, you do have issues. Steppy 42 at Benedict Berlin. There have been some in War Thunder naval forces, but if they made into production, I haven't looked it up yet. I quite like the Type C-38. Okay, Carl, rough seas for Vosper, but sailable for E-boat. Honestly, the Vosper actually used to do quite well in rough seas. it's kind of interesting. The E-boat should, because it's the bigger boat, do better in rough seas than the Vosper. And the Vosper does quite well, because the Vosper's design is very good at going with the water and going with the movement. The E-boat, well, it depends on how they approach the water and how they ride over it. And the E-boats is more Jeremy Clarkson power, and the Vosper is more Vosper is more well, the Vosper is more TIG, you know, racing car driver, gonna take everything precisely on the corners, and you basically, no matter what they do, they're probably going to end up doing it the right way because they just naturally steer quite well. Jerichen, Rigid Raiders. Yep, I knew I was forgetting something. That's the name of the boats the Royal Marines have. Charles, forgot I created this YouTube account years ago. The real name is Rob. Oh, well, you know, it's a good thing. Carl Gannon, thanks for joining us, Rob. Carl Gannon, good man. Cleaning is important. Your stock will last longer. Right. Yes. I have the stock. Angus O'Sonnell, man cannot live on iron brew. He also needs crisp. I don't have crisps. I'm very good. I have chocolate brownies and bath buns. Blue Shipbuilder. The US converted many flush stack and interwar class destroyers into fast destroyer minesweepers in the Pacific later in World War II. They did. The Callison class, and I have looked at them. They did a lot of good work, and that was the major reason, I think, why the Admiral class look like they do, because really they're converting destroyers down into it. So they think, well, any ship which has it should be armed like a destroyer, and it's not a destroyer. It really isn't. Nick Stanley, yeah. Select assault sweeping in European affairs started at Dieppe and Diego Sarez and continued throughout the war in North Africa, Sicily, Italy, Normandy, and southern France. Yeah, pretty much it was just constant. It was a constant sweeping, and I think during Dunkirk they actually tried some of the motor torpedo boats towing the paravines behind them. Going at high speed, or as high as they could while towing it. It wasn't good. I think one of them managed to do some serious damage to itself. Charles, I had an acquaintance in Sabre during FOST, Thursday War of Portland. We had lunch alongside in Guernsey between serials, but it stopped when they were unable to restart the engines again one day. Yeah, that's always an issue. Kargan, changing hull numbers, the Russians used to play that regularly during the Cold War. Yep, it causes problems. Prime Flux. Sweden brought Italian MTB in the late 30s with Isotta Francini engines, and there were lots of problems with the engines. They were on top of those problems about the same time World War II ended. I'm not really sure they were on top of the problems by the same time World War II ended. They found new engines. Happy. What about the steam gunboats? Well, A, you're displaying cookies again and not feeding us. That's cruel. B, steam gunboats. It's kind of interesting. There are a few wandering around, and there's going to be a couple popping up in the miscellaneous section at the end. Because basically, I've got 6 groupings, and I have an introduction, conclusion. So it's divided into 8, which is why part 1 is 1 to 4, and then part 2 is sections 5 to 8. And the miscellaneous, so lots of interesting things go into the steam areas. Jeff Wheeler, interwar UK MTBs on the China station? No. Well, I think some made it out to India. I don't think any got out to the China station, though. But I haven't really honestly checked, because when I found they got out to India, I didn't really check if they managed to get any further, because Didn't seem likely they would. They had sloops out there, and sloops were doing that sort of mission. Having gunboats out, the torpedo boats out there would be interesting strategy. Although, interesting enough, if you had some gunboats, they could have really secured the defense of Singapore. I might add some into my plans for how to defend Singapore. Some torpedo boats and gunboats could really make it very difficult for the Japanese to make the crossing into Singapore. Steam White, sort of sea cavalry at Surigao Strait, almost 40 PTs got no hits, but harassed the battleships and cruisers all the way up till the DDs got torpedo hits. Yeah, pretty much that's what they do. They are harassers. They are mosquitoes. The fact that they could get a hit caused you trouble. And I think, as I pointed out, 326 of these were built. So they're each carrying 4 torpedoes. There's 326 of them. So if you think about that, that's a theoretical, if you could mass them all together in one place, 1,304 torpedoes able to be launched at you. Let's be honest, that would be Jellicoe's nightmares. And as I will remind everyone, I will be finishing this at 8:30 this evening, because at 9 o'clock I'm on the Discovery Channel in the UK. And I like to go and watch myself to check to see if the lovely people on Mysteries of the Deep have used my best side. Seriously though, my mum wants to watch it, and I have to be there apparently. Mums like to be happy about these things. Right. Right then, Martin Sims, has anyone thought of equipping something like a Bay-class LSD with a modern motor gunboat? Well, they're called CB90s, I think, from memory. And yes, we have looked at combo boat 90s. They have been looked at, and frankly, they would be a good idea. I look at what we do. We currently turn the rigid raider into some sort of machine gun toting thing to escort landing craft. And I'm really not keen on it. I would honestly think that if currently the ratio is, if you took something like the Albion or Bulwark, you have 3 LCUs in the back. If you took one of those out, you could probably stock in 2 to 3 CB90s in the space remaining. Depending on how you park them and put them in, probably 2, but you could possibly make it a 3rd. And that would be really quite useful for escorting your landing craft into shore. And okay, so Carl Gannon, you can say that for max speed, as it was established during trials when everything is clean and new. Yeah, max speed is established when everything is clean and new, but remember, it's also not been adapted at that point by the engineers, who might play around things. Should I be... Can't know. Jeff Bealer, US PT boats by the end of the war had swapped torpedoes for rockets and bigger guns for junk bashing. Yep, and all sorts of other things as well. Trentagos, USN PT boats were used for busting Japanese land-based radars by Section 22 Field Unit 12 and 14 Australian operations. Yep, they were. They were quite good at it. Calgan, for the gap. I was referring to the Germans during the interwar period. This also applied to the Bismarck. Yeah. Chevy 42 at Dr. Clark. That might explain why the Japanese Type 5 looks like a trawler that someone glued a 75mm and a couple of 25mm cannons to. Yeah. They might have had the same idea as Admiral Henderson. Prime Flux. E-boats have a strong V-shaped hull, but ours did use a more steep planing type. Yep. They have... The V-shaped hull is useful, but it can have issues in certain weathers. And Or especially when the wind is coming from a certain angle. You know, that's the trouble with the channel. You often get the wind coming straight on you, the waves coming straight at you. Especially if you're coming down the channel, basically from the North Sea. If you're going up the channel, you sometimes have the wind behind you, but it's let's put it this way, it's not particularly fun sometimes. Jeff Beeler, World War I Italian motor torpedo boats mainly operate close to home in the Adriatic with lighter weights than World War II. Easier on engines. Even so, Drac mentioned one missed the attack on the Sven Interland with engine trouble. Yeah, they did. They have issues, okay? Italians produce very beautiful ships. You know, there's the old commodores in it that couple of the car manufacturers now are Italian design with German engineering. Rolls-Royce is British design with German engineering. Also, I get the impression from some of the boats in War Thunder that the Japanese little boats were meant to travel on rivers in direct fire support role. There's an interesting thing because you don't have to be a little boat to deliver direct fire support. I can think of a daring class destroyer from 1954 who decided to take a wander up a Malayan river and going, hello everyone. Ballymurra, why does the Royal Navy no longer have heavily armed patrol boats? Archer's armament appears to be anemic. It is anemic, and the river class is also one. Basically because the Royal Navy's patrol ships are mostly for fishery duties nowadays. They're not really considering combat options in terms of heavy combat environments. They don't really think they're going to end up in those sort of scenarios. And at the moment, short term, they're definitely right. Medium term, probably so. Long term, you can never say. Long term, you'd like to have the option. But also the fact is you can manufacture small boats fairly quickly. If you consider in the UK, we have quite a vibrant small boat, fast boat industry, thanks to the Royal National Lifeboats, you know, the RNLI, Royal National Lifeboat Institute, because they're always building a next generation and the next generation of fast lifeboats. You have that combined with the various yachts and motor launchers, means that as long as you can get your hands on the weapons, you could build the attack boats in the UK fairly quickly. And it's the same in America. It's the reason you don't have these ships a lot around in peacetime is because when you need them, you make them. The question is whether you'd make them manned or not. That's the interesting thing. Jeff Beeler, E-boats had a round hull from planing hull. UK used hard shine corner hulls. They actually, quite a few designs had different styles of hulls. The designers did keep mucking around with different hulls. So you can never really say one group has one set and one group has the other set. You can usually find an example which has that on both sides. At least an experimental one. Bishon, the fictional US Kane from the novel Kane Mutiny is an old World War I four-pipe destroyer minesweeper. In the 1950s film is a Fletcher class destroyer. Yep, that is true. It was class. I have the class details on here somewhere. Sorry, singing to myself. It's a good day so far. It's a good day. Yes, I've got tons of marking to do, but I'm having fun chatting with you lot and forgetting it. Which is always fun. And the US Navy class. you have Wicks class, and you have Smith class mine-laying destroyers. Which is, they're sort of minesweeping destroyers as well, they're useful. Right then, let's get back to the questions. Right then. Turning 343. What did I miss? What did I miss? You haven't missed much yet. Don't worry. We're just talking these things through. King's Rook. Would the hydrofoils of the 70s, 80s be continuation ATB concept? Yes, pretty much. It's high speed, low drag, small ship. Well, how much damage can you do? Richard Hughes. Turning 343. Tins of sardines and clear flat iron brew. I wouldn't call that clear flat iron brew. It's water. It's me being sort of healthy. Sort of. Plus, these lovely bottles of iron brew are all given to me, have all been given to me by my wonderful girlfriend. And I'm not going to chuck the bottles away because they're from her. So I might have drunk the contents, but I can still reuse them in a form of free recycling because I'm a soppy old boy. And still remember the fact they were very nice presents from her. Right. Carl Hammond, how effective were the mine hunters based out of Milford Haven in protecting shipping in the Irish Sea? Look, they were fairly effective, but it all depends on, in the nicest way, when the mines are dropped, if they have an idea where they are and how quickly they can get to them. That's the thing. If they can get to the mines before they are... If they know where the mines roughly have been dropped, they can seal off the area and clear it. If they don't, no one knows it's been dropped because it's been inserted by a submarine or it's been dropped by an observed aircraft, then if they're lucky, they spot it on one of their patrols. If they're not lucky, they don't spot it on one of their patrols and, ouch. Daniel Freeman, Dr. Clark, consider some place marker to help you to keep track. I've posted in 1903. I am 10 minutes behind on the questions. Prime Flux, no, they did trials with RBS 17 Hellfires on CB90, but they are not mounted, but shore-based in the service. Let's put it this way: the CB90 has taken all sorts of things in its fun. And I would reckon, in the nicest way, Hellfire missiles are sort of some things, but I've been looking at them and I've been wondering if they could have Martlet missiles fitted for some purely academic reasons. Daniel Freeman and Dr. Clark, I think the CV90 would fit in the Absalom class from Denmark that I want for the Iron. It does fit in the Absalom class from Denmark because they use it occasionally from them. Seeing what the changeover to airdrop torps work better than the tubes on PT boats. Over drinks at a bar, pilots told Peter sailors how they love new airdrop type. After drinks, dump tubes and compressors. Yeah, it did explain quite a lot of how the Americans evolved them. The British, on the other hand, well, the British had their own methodology and it worked quite well for their ships. See, you have different styles of how you're going to use these and how you're going to use your boat, the hull, the crew, the method and modus operandi, your enemy, all these things, your likely sea conditions, all affect what is going to be a viable strategy for you. And so, in fact, small boats become even more specialized for the local area than larger ships do. Steve Mike, Kargan, what is your best side, right or left? Inquiring minds want to know. Well, decide yourself. Nah, seriously, it's just fun sometimes seeing these, because I take part and recorded them ages ago. They're recorded mostly at the end of last year, beginning of this year, and they're now coming out, and it's quite funny looking back at myself sort of 9 months ago and going, oh God, did I look that thin? No, mostly it's looking back and sort of going, what was that question about? Oh, that was that one. And oh, that was the full. Have they used the full answer? Oh, they have. Oh, that's cool. Bruce Marino, for 1930s Japan, the Unicol is enlarged with the old idea, the idea of motherships in light of the Lancaster coalition. Yeah. Okay, so for 1930s Japan, the Unicol in a large with the old idea of mother ships in light of the Lancaster equations for the decisive night battle. Yes, they are pretty much. Basically, the idea is that you can have a lot of fun. The Japanese do get very obsessed with mother ships. Now, one of the interesting things I've always thought, and if I'd have been them, when they're launching their midget submarines and things for attacks on Pearl Harbor, is that's adding a whole layer of complexity. I prefer to launch an amphibious assault than the sort of the midget submarines. But B, rather than having midget submarines go and having the subs take midget submarines over, why not just have decent long range subs and have them sitting over there and sitting outside San Francisco Harbor? Because the moment you attack Pearl Harbor, whatever forces in San Francisco are probably going to sortie quite rapidly. And if they're sorting rapidly, they probably won't be doing good anti-submarine warfare, so you could just go pong, pong, pong. But no, that's just me. Requires a certain type of bastard to think of that sort of thing. Use the French. Danny Freeman at Douglas Clark at Jeff Beeler. Italian MTBs get their engines from Alfa Romeo. I think you're possibly meaning that in jest, but I actually think possibly they do at one point. I'm not sure. Tony Penfold, when was the last RN MTB MGB? Ooh. I think we had some pottling around till about till the late 50s. We certainly were experimenting with designs into the 60s. We had various ideas, experimenting going on. Steve Mike, Rolls-Royce Kestrel, direct copy of Curtiss V12, hence Allison Merlin are direct cousins. Packard are non-metric clone of Merlin, but can use Allison parts, which are highly regarded. Cool. Paul from Chicago, it seems to me the RN kept a few small boats always building after about 1900, so they could spin out quickly if required. Well, that wouldn't be at all the intelligent idea to do. Rather than committing to one design when it's peacetime, you just keep producing better and better designs every year, and then just go, right then, we've got a war. Big order of that design. It works. Brock Payne. Oh, Steam like Clemson. Yep, that's the type of destroyer. Brock Payne. There's an Irish company that's building some very futuristic fast attack patrol boats as well. Yes, there is. They're a bit nutty, but they're producing it. Government target. At Dr. Clark. What do we call the small raft-like things that special forces use? Are they the modern day equivalent to E-boats, PT boats? They have to be on a certain level, the modern equivalent, but honestly, they're not really a modern equivalent. CB90s and those sort of things, I think, are what you're sort of going for. So, yeah, to an extent, they are, yes. But I'm not sure how well I would call them the equivalent, because they're not really as equivalently armed. Tony Penfold, what weapon outfit would you do if the RN variant converts RNLI or similar boats? If we were taking a design based off one of the larger RNLI classes, you would probably be looking at 40mm Bofors, a couple of them. You'd possibly be looking at some naval strike missiles, and maybe some torpedoes from helicopter torpedoes as well. Maybe some Martlet missiles. Probably I would do a Martlet 40mm mount on the front. That'd be fun things. Maybe Martlet 40mm mount on the rear as well. Rotary UAV, which would quickly pop up and down to run signal. As said, naval strike missiles, anti-submarine torpedoes, tidal ray sonar if I could, from a helicopter system. Yeah, could fit all that in quite easily. Rely on other equipment for long-range radar and these sort of things. Jeff Beeler, how did Michael Clapp earn a mention in dispatches commanding a ton-class minesweeper in the mid-60s in the Indonesian conflict? Oh, well, okay, so this is a fun story which he told me a while back, and then I went and looked it up and found that the version he told me was severely downplayed. So basically, there was a patch of water which they had been declared the British weren't supposed to go to and no one's supposed to go through. And gamely, the British decided to send a ton-class minesweeper through. And this thing was Michael was the commander, and he got her festooned in machine guns. And they went through, and they were overflown by several jets. They were mock attacked by multiple boats, and the whole time he holds fire. He doesn't fire first, but he keeps on going. And that's the thing. So he goes through and boom. He's broken there. No one can go here. And of course, he basically gets to mention dispatches for managing to hold the fire and keep his crew and everything together and going. Minor Sims, having met some RNLI coxswains, arming the boats would be the last thing I would do. I would probably arm the boats and leave those coxswains in charge. Karl von Gazenberg, E-boats deployed from the German World War II merchant raiders. I don't think they ever did try. I think they thought about it, but I don't think they ever actually tried that. It would have been quite interesting if they had. Carl Harmon has written, I am presuming they would find it easier to find the Sunderland base, or would they not be used for that? I'm not sure. I think you've got an earlier question that's part of, and I've lost the earlier question. Carl Gunn, I'm pretty sure that drinking water rather than iron brew is not one sign of the apocalypse. No, it's not. It's fine. I drank 20 litres over the weekend. I'm being sensible. I basically put enough caffeine and quinine and various other things into my system over the weekend that it's probably just about now to sort of starting to thin out. I know I haven't needed to sleep since the weekend, which has been good. It's how I'm keeping up with my work. Donald Fritz, American destroyer escorts. Why are they named destroyer escorts and not frigates? And did the USN use corvettes and frigates in World War II? The Brits have a few famous designs, yet we made destroyer escorts. So did the Brits make destroyer escorts. They're called the Hunter class. Now, here's the thing. The Hunt class, I mean. Escort destroyers are still built to destroyer standards, which are warship standards. Frigates are usually built in civilian yards, which will try and use some warship standards. They will have some warship standards, but it might not be the same as full warship standards. So the US, which had the production facilities it could afford to produce destroyer escorts, produced destroyer escorts which were full warships. The British, who to try and make up the numbers in the time, started building frigates, which had their standards pared down somewhat, let's say. So that's the difference. Jeff Beeler, this dude, Luigi Ruzio, 1887 to 1951, nicknamed the Sinker in World War I as a torpedo boat commander, having sunk 2 Austro-Hungarian battleships, SMS Wien in 1917 and SMS Sven Istvan in 1918. Found a Canadian source of iron. Oh, yep, cool guy. And Jeff Beeler's also found, for any Canadians interested, a source of iron brew in Etobicoke, if any Canadians are curious. Seriously, with this sheer number of Scottish and proud Scots in Canada, who even wear their kilts far more often than anyone like me ever would, because honestly, with this accent, me wearing a kilt is probably going too far. I'd probably be hunted down at some point. There is, I am surprised it's not easy to get hold of iron brew. Iron brew is the national drink of Scottish people. Basically, it's, you know, you have whiskey and you have iron brew, and the two are important. They're critical. Etobicoke. King's Rook. Thank you. Etobicoke. All right. I don't get the right. My Canadian. Okay. Richard Hughes. Dr. Clark. Are naval mines used in modern navies? Yep. They're a very easy way of sinking an enemy ship. If you're silly, you don't notice it. Brock Payne. A guy named H.I. Sutton does a lot of study and writing on naval special forces craft, both modern and historic. Yes, he does. He's also on Twitter. Kevin McTaggart. Dr. Clark. Could CB-90s turn into UAVs? I think you mean USVs, unmanned surface vessels. Yes. Could they be used for surface coastal patrols? They could be. You could be. UAVs, USVs, UUVs, unmanned underwater vessels. The only reason I am at all being picky is I spent the morning marking, as you know, and most of the day marking, and some of the students were writing about unmanned vehicles, and they kept getting them wrong. So now I am making sure I get it right. Jeff Beeler. Apparently Fiat engines were bad, and the Isotta Fraschini S1000 in various versions with a power output of 2,000 to 2,300 horsepower and a maximum speed of about 40 to 42 knots at full load was the best. Possibly. Tapio Isaac. Hi. Hello. Possibly, but again, still, the Italians had so many engine problems. They really did. Stephen White. Extreme depth at Pacific Ridge off California. More like bow wave of the continent. No parking till close to the coast or inside harbour next to Alcatraz. Subs parking only. I suppose that's a good reason, but, you know, you can still do it. Danny from Dr. Quinine overdose is nasty. You can go blind and there is no antidote treatment. It wasn't last time I looked, which was a long time ago to be fair. I doubt there's enough in iron brew to give you a quinine overdose. I don't think there is. I think it's probably trace amounts in most respects. Let me just check. Let's see. Yeah, it's flavourings, including ammonium ferric citrate and quinine. So, yeah, I don't think there's going to be enough in any of them to cause me to have any issues, no matter how much I drink. Carl Gannon. Some flag class corvettes served in the US during the war. Yes, they did. But they were corvettes, not frigates. And not destroyer escorts. But they are corvettes. Okay. Carl Harman, which mines in the Irish Sea would be easier to find? Mines in the Which mines in the Irish Sea would it be easier to find? Mines in the Irish Sea, or would they not be used? Okay. If you're going to drop Irish mines into the Irish Sea, you're probably going to be dropping. They're probably going to be airdrop mines. If it is going to be a submarine drop mine, a submarine deployed mines, then that's a very problematic area to get into, because you have to consider at both ends of the Irish Sea there are large ports and large areas where there are going to be lots and lots of convoys and escorts going backwards and forwards. So yes, they're target-rich environments, but they're also heavily patrolled environments. So your balance is, why are you going through a heavily patrolled area to get to a less patrolled area to drop off mines, when you could just go into the patrolled area, drop your mines off there while you've got the opportunity, which is the area which the ships are going through and far more likely to go your mines than that. But airdrop mines into the Irish Sea were a regular problem, and they were often an issue. But again, if you spot the plane going over, and once you have radar, and you have the intercepts coming from Bletchley Park, well, you know, it becomes a little bit easier to find those mines. Hello, Will. Late to the party again. Well, don't worry. The party's still going. It's got about another hour yet of me happily chatting away. Seamwhite. Cal actually has Slovak, a Baltic village, and Kingsburg. Nice Viking city near me. Ah, cool. Kagan, I found an iron brew source in Belgium. Me and Drac are going to start getting commissioned from iron brew at this rate. Greg Sasaki, the sugar would kill you before the quinine did, methinks. Possibly. Possibly. But this is why I have the days when I drink water. Because it means the sugar will never get to the level, hopefully, which would cause me issues. Drax said that World War mines still get beached in 2020. Yes, they do. In fact, I think also recently in China they had some mines from the Russo-Japanese War. That's from 1904, 1905 wash ashore. So think about that. That's mines which are about 116 years old. And they did go boom. These things were made to last in salt water. If they get in the right conditions of salt water, they do last very, very well. And you have more trouble is when you've had mines which have been beat down and then flowed up because they suddenly get free. Those mines are often the ones which are most trickiest to try and diffuse. Manhomes. Okay, so you drink iron brew like the rest of us drink gin and tonic, you know, to help against malaria. Yes, that is another reason for iron brew. Carl Harmon, would Sunderlands be used to hunt mines from the air while they're coming and going? Yes, pretty much. Sunderlands and Swordfish would always be on a mine lookout. And if their radar did pick up something which they thought might be a mine, they'd report it into the Minesweepers. Stephanie Wilson, and we still find bombs from the Second World War. There were a lot that did not explode, but could if you nudge them. Yes, interesting enough, I work, as I said, for King's University, and we were evacuated, well, on a day which, annoyingly, I wasn't there, because otherwise I'd have got to go home early. But the building was evacuated because to keep us protected from where they thought might be bombs, etc., if they were in the ground, they built all the big labs out the back, and then they found a big, huge bomb out the back of the university near where all the labs were, which have, of course, the high-pressure air and gas and all sorts of things in them. So, yeah, that was fun if that had been gone off. That would have been a big, big boom. Jeff Beeler, what were the first purpose minesweepers? They were converted trawlers. The Royal Navy was commissioning them just prior to World War I. And basically, they were minesweepers, and their job was to tow things behind them, which would gather up the mines and make the mines go off. And you could, if they got caught in the system and weren't going off, you'd start shooting guns at them until they did go off. Not the most sensible approach, but it worked. Which is why there was, even prior to World War I, there was a naval rating and a naval badge for accuracy, which wasn't to do with the Boxer Rebellion or anything like that. You know, the British had gone through all these land engagements over the years, centuries of Navy fighting ashore, never had a marksmanship badge for sailors. Mine warfare gets up, there's a marksmanship badge for sailors, and there are sailors doing it and then go, yeah, we get this extra money. Yeah, you get this extra money because you could be assigned to a minesweeper. Yeah, fun times. Thinking we need a Scottish village too. Lots of Ulster too. Actually, my city is a Scottish or Irish lord, a derivative of Cochrane or Cochrane. The intro tie into Iron Rope. Yeah, those two. You can have a Scottish pub with whiskey on all the shelves and iron brew on tap. That'd be a nice place to go. Daniel Freeman, thinking of mines, isn't there still a huge mine dug under one of the World War battlefields by the British that didn't go off sitting there? Right then. Minor Sims, look at what they found dredging Pompeii for the Queen Elizabeth. Oh, yes, they found all sorts of things. For starters, they found the Mary Rose. This is how long they had the Queen Elizabeth's plan, by the way. Do you think the money appears from nowhere for the Mary Rose to be dug up and got out? And that's about 20 years, possibly 30 years ago, before the Queen Elizabeth class come into service. Kevin Tang, what happens if whales hit a mine? Do they explode or do they hit them with something? Okay, it depends on the mine. If it is a contact mine and a whale hits it, it can go off. If it is a mine which is designed is a magnetic mine, i.e. it goes off when it's got a big enough disturbance in the magnetic field, it won't go off. Okay? So the whale will just get a very big bruise, which isn't nice for a whale. The whale's done nothing to deserve getting a black eye from a mine. Why are you giving the whale a black eye via mine? Seriously. Kevin, wishing that on a poor whale, that's terrible. Greg Sowski, I don't from on a farm in Belgium. Part of the Battle of Messines. The ammo ship in the Thames estuary is particularly interesting. That is paid particularly careful attention to, the SS Richard Montgomery, because if that went up, we would have a tidal wave that would be colossal. Calvin Classel, Stephanie Wilson, at least in the UK you find German bombs. We in Hungary find German, Russian, British, US bombs like monthly. Yeah. There was a lot of fighting going on. There's a lot of bombs needed to be dropped. Raxtra, as long as the Scottish village isn't the one from the bad Star Trek TNG episode where Dr. We'll leave that less said about that episode, the better. Sting. Ken McLean, I wonder how long it will take for me to not immediately think battleship when I hear the phrase Queen Elizabeth class. Probably a long time. Probably will just get used to it, and that'll be when they're retiring. Jeff Beeler, France, for example, still has no areas from World War I due to high concentration of unexploded munitions. Yep. Kings, they were really useful, those areas in World War II. Kings Richard, if SS Montgomery goes up, the UK gets to experience the fun of the Halifax explosion. If the SS Montgomery goes up, we get to experience the fun of the Halifax explosion, added to the fun of a tidal tsunami. It's really not fun. It's why I'm quite glad I live on quite high ground. We look down into London from where I live, and it's a down into London. So it's a case of hopefully. M. Ripper Wallace, seen the bomb disposal unit van on my commute around Pompeii at least once a month. Yeah, they're doing stuff. There was a lot of bombs dropped on. Jeff Beeler, first purpose-built class of Minesweepers. Well, they used a lot of trawlers in World War I, so I don't think any of them were really purpose-built. I'm not sure about the other nations, but for the British, it's the Halcyon class, really, which are the first purpose-built minesweepers. I think the mine layers, purpose-built ones, start cropping up in World War I, World War II, into war years, all sorts of things. But actual purpose-built minesweepers, I think you're looking at the Halcyon class. As in ships being built for minesweeping specifically. Jerrison, I regularly get unexploded bomb reports for work, and they show all the different Luftwaffe bombs. But for some reason it shows a 18-inch or maybe an 18.1-inch shell for identification. Ooh, lovely. Kevin Taylor, well, it's better than the mine going off and killing them. In lots of... Yes, I know. Kevin Taylor, well, it's better than the mine going off and killing them. I agree. Read a book from World War I where sailors fired depth charges at a whale thinking it was a U-boat. There are lots of examples, not just of them thinking it's U-boats. One of the examples I often give is the After the Operation Torch, the invasion of Africa, the tribal destroyers are protecting the ports from enemy submarines. And they detect some large shoals of fish. So they actually depth charge the fish just in case submarines would use those shoals to get in close to drive them away. And then they decide they're going to stop and pick up some fish. And actually, it ends at some American aircraft fly ahead, and I think it's an anti-submarine hunt and dive down to do some machine gunning. No one gets hurt, but they're actually using the depth charges to hunt fish, and basically that's what they're doing, specifically to drive them away so they don't provide cover for submarines getting close. King's Rook. There was a tsunami during the Halifax explosion, just doesn't get talked about as much. Yes, there was. But it was a surface tsunami rather than... You see, if you've got a tsunami which is caused by a surface explosion, that creates a big wave, but it's not quite the same as the massive explosion under ground would. Although, the thing is, it would create the ripple out wave, and it would also create a big hole in the ground. So, you know, water might go in. It'll be very... Let's put it this way. It's something I'd rather keep a theoretical discussion than a real-life discussion. Carl Harmon, how effective are the Q-ships in Model 1? They're fairly good effective. Fairly scary. They did put in some very, very good officers in them, and the thing is, it starts to make the Germans very wary about A, taking on lone merchant ships, and B, more importantly, when they're attacking convoys, are they sure they know all the escorts? And certainly during World War II, they did look at reintroducing them as part of the convoy escorts, and they decided in just to put normal weapons on as many merchant ships as they could. Jeff Beeler, favourite books on small ships? I like Peter Dickens' one on MTBs. Well, I'm gonna, because I really do like this book, and because he certainly doesn't get enough praise, I'm gonna go for Leonard C. Reynolds' Gunboats again. I know I did it at the beginning, but honestly, it's a really cool book. I do have some others around here, but yeah, this one's good. This one is good. And I like the way it's organised, and I like the drawings. I like the fact that the detail they get into, and I like the fact that it's actually written, put together by people who are actually in them. And some of the things they get up to, you know, are real fun. You know, dog boats were occasionally used for amphibious operations. Hello, Osprey! That's very, very generous and very good to see you again. How are you doing? Right. Brock Payne, got to get back out into the wood shop, so some time to listen on my phone. Enjoy, Brock, enjoy. Stuart Crow, I live 200 yards from the Langston Harbour Starfish Decoy site. Nobody has any idea how much is still in the mud. It's a nature reserve, so nobody cares. And it's best to keep it that way. Okay, Stuart? Keep it a nature reserve. Those are good things to do with those things. I'm always suggesting that people should put nature reserves around military practice areas. Tony Penfold, great pictures online of the damage taken by HMS Belfast from a magnetic mine. Here's the thing, a lot of those ships which get damaged early in the war, like Belfast, but which are repairable, get a sort of pass through some of the higher risk, far heavier learning eras of the war, and that's why they survived the whole war. So, you know, sometimes getting damaged early in the war can be good for your survival of your ship. In Belfast's case, it certainly was. Daniel Freeman, at Brock Payne, building MTB PT boat? Oh, if he's building anyone, it should be an MGB. Motor gunboats were cool. They were certainly, you know, they're more my favourite. Carl Harmon, I have found many old maps of the Pembroke Dock and Tenby area ever need images of them, give me a message on Discord as get access to all newspapers. Oh, cool. Please do. Jeff Beeler, steam torpedo gunboats. Chilean one sinks a battleship during a civil insurrection. Underrated because trial speed slower than, but faster in a seaway. This is the thing. You know, trial speeds and motor torpedo boats do not matter. It's like trial rangers and motor torpedo boats do not matter. They are so evolved by the time they actually get into combat, and their crews do so much work on them because you have small unit dynamics. So the same differences when I'm talking about a destroyer crew versus a cruiser crew versus a battleship crew are many, many times over in a torpedo boat crew. Most of the people will know each other. They will be on pretty much first name terms. They will work very well. People who don't fit in the crew will not be in there for long. There isn't anywhere to hide. They will be organized. They will have their own everyone will have their duties, and they will also be covered because they have to, because there is no cover apart from each other. So they tend to work together. So they tend to approach jobs and operations and issues far more collectively, which means, okay, let's say you do have someone who's good on the crew at procurement and someone who's good at engineering. They might stick their head together and go, you know what? We could get an extra couple of knots out of these engines if we had a better carburetor, or we had this or that, and you can clean the fuel up and all these things. This makes a big difference to how fast they go and the range they get out. See what? You know what we Californians live with? Japanese tsunami. We lost most of our beaches. Seems to strip all the sand away. Hard to surf over rocks. It is. Although, as a sea kayaker, I can say it's very easy to cut a sea kayak over rocks. You carry it down, you go out, and you have fun paddling. See what? Chicago and Houston, we had ammo ships explode. Famous Houston survivor told of watching War Movie John Wave and the screen bulge out during attack scene. Well, you know, good to have early 3D experience. King's Rook. There are a number of natural reserves around military bases here in Canada. A lot of endangered species, like to call them home. Yeah, that's a good one. Don't worry, Nick Stanley. Oh, I'm getting messages. Right. Daniel Freeman. No, but I have a scrap of wood I'm going to make into a tribal for my son, or maybe me. Brock, we are all now jealous and would like pictures on the Discord. King's Rook. There is an endangered flower that loves the tank range out in Saskatchewan because the towns tear up the land and provide the conditions the flowers need to survive. I presume that's the tanks. Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if that does make it good for them. Nighttime production. Odd scenario. Sorry, you should expect nothing less from me at this stage. SS Richard Montgomery or Halifax explosion, but in Kiel, World War II. How badly would that hurt? Would that hurt their ability to build and wage war? Oh, that would be terrible. If that happened in Kiel, oh God help Kiel. These are French. They would. That takes out a lot of the stuff. I mean, that takes out a lot of their submarine production and a lot of their ship production. And possibly, considering where it is and the topography of the area, a lot of their armor production, which could impact upon their tanks as well. Let's put it this way. Anything happening major to Kiel is not good for the German war scenario. And that's one of the interesting things, because let's say nuclear weapons... there hadn't been the D-Day invasion when it was. The Eastern Front hadn't been going the Soviets' way, and nuclear weapons have been developed earlier. You might well find they get dropped on Germany as well as Japan, or maybe rather than Japan, because Japan might, after seeing them dropped on Germany, decide it would get by out the war. Kiel would have certainly been a target. In fact, I'm often surprised Kiel wasn't hit even harder than it was in World War II. It's not a nice thing, though, to talk about, but, you know, it's such a critical spot. Sure, Max. Small ships is where things become the most variable because there is less oversight and more room for experimentation. You ruin a boiler on your PT boat, you get chewed out. On a battleship, you get fired. Yeah, you ruin a boiler on a PT boat. It's basically, most of them don't even have boilers. Most of them are literally motor engines, which are internal combustion systems. And they work. And if they go wrong, you need to repair them. And that's what they do. Carl Harmon, I'll make sure to message Discord when in work. Also, photos of maps of Germany used to bomb my local. Ooh, interesting. King's Rock, Halifax explosion is small nuclear-sized explosion. It's bad. It is. Halifax is a bad explosion. But that's not anything really. That's a small nuclear explosion. But the amount sitting on the SS Montgomery actually dwarfs that. But you have a kiloton. Once you're talking about kilotons of explosive power, it doesn't matter whether it's nuclear or non-nuclear. It's still going to be very, very dangerous. The only advantage if it's non-nuclear is you're not going to be completely covered in radiation. In theory. In theory, he says. There are always options where you do get it. In the world, that is. The world? Let's see. Right. If I quickly go, because I got a message sent to me over Twitter. Someone obviously not sending the tweet chat. And so, Mayor Kepper. And it's from Nick Stanley, the very, very good expert on Minesweepers and all these things. Mayor Culper, my alert function failed to trigger, hence my being adrift tonight. Some quick thoughts on the manning levels. You flagged up the Admirable class. If you're operating a multi-threat environment, you're going to need those warm bodies. Fleet sweepers will need sweep deck crews, AA teams, DC parties, and the ability to sustain your op tempo over more than just a couple of days. Aztec operators too. Alderine's crews were between 85 to 90, and they were on their knees a week into Neptune. Sweeping by day, whilst manned for air threat, and then surface, subsurface patrol light and night. Makes sense, and yeah. I do. Okay, yeah, if I'm being serious, yes, I can understand the large numbers of personnel, but I still think that's quite a... It's going to sound strange. I can understand multi-threat environment and all these things going on, and them having the weapons and having this stuff, but I still think that's a lot of crew to take into that sort of operation. But yeah, Nick is right to point out those things. And thank you, Nick, for the explanation. Right, back to the questions. Beijing, Manhattan Project used Halifax explosion as an example of what an atomic bomb would do before first test. Yep. Prime flux, like Russian ammo dumps. Yeah, we don't want those to go up. Those would really not be good. C1, south end of Salton Sea, our north end of North American dunes, 80 miles long. North end wind sometimes uncovers old World War II tanks and vehicles, but military, yes, on people. The militaries do tend to prey on people visiting target ranges. They might be firing at them. King's Rook, SS Richard Montgomery would be about 3 times bigger than Halifax explosion. Roughly. Could be compounded by pressure. Nictasia. Anastasia, should be fun. I live 40 miles from the Montgomery. Yeah. Just hope it doesn't go. That's basically what we all do. Matthew Groves, sorry if I missed the explanation earlier, but how does one distinguish between small ships under Article 8 and torpedo boats? As Article 8 prohibits torpedoes on ships of that size. Well, right then. So, if we go to the thing... Okay, subject to any naval agreement, which may subject them to limitation, the following vessels are exempt from limitation. A. naval surface combatants of 600 tons, standard displacement, and under. So if your torpedo boat is under 600 tons, it doesn't matter if it carries torpedoes or whatever, it's still allowed. The vessels over 600 tons, but up to no more than 2,000 tons, are then limited by the following characteristics. They have to mount a gun. They cannot mount a gun of more than 6.1 inches. They cannot mount more than 4 guns of greater than 3 inches. And 3 are designed to, or fitted to launch torpedoes, are designed for a speed greater than 20 knots. Here's the interesting thing. If you go through that, there is a problem for one class. And it's one of the classes I brought up earlier. And I did specifically put it in the things, because papers are good managed to get out of order, as is traditional with me. Come on, spickers. Where are my spickers? There's Cassiopeia. I have her somewhere. Is she sitting looking at me? That wouldn't surprise me. No, Cassiopeia's not staring at me. So she's not either of those two. That one, I will get there in a second. Cassiopeia. So, Spicker. Now, I've put down her displacement as 1,040 tons. The Italians did try and claim they were 600 tons at one point, and various other things they tried to claim, and all sorts of things. Their speed was 34 knots. Their armament was 3.9-inch guns, 9 to 11 20mm guns, 2 13.2mm machine guns, and 4 18-inch torpedoes in single mounts, and up to 20 mines. Basically, that is your escort. It works quite well. I've classified, the Italians though classify it as a torpedo boat. I've inserted gun there. Because my theory is if it's carrying 3.9-inch guns, it is pretty much... And that was the one they tried to get in and trying to get under. Right. Scene White, Dr. Clark, I was wondering someday, can we cover the British and US and the World Merchant Marine ships and crews? They get no credit and did a huge job. That was essential. Yeah, happy to do that in a few, sort of one day. Once I get to them, I'm happy to do it. Bruce Marino. Good, Doctor. I've had the idea of IJN subs as US in ports in Panama Canal supplemented with minefields from neutral cargoes for Viva in Port Canal, which sell sink kits. Knots of HE. Kilotons of HE. It's tempting, but honestly, it's far easier just to load up a merchant ship and send it into the Panama Canal and blow it sky high. Honestly, if the Japanese had options available to them, if they'd been sensible, sending merchant ships loaded with high explosives to go off in the ports would have probably been quite good. Yeah, we can do stuff about the Merchant Navy. I like to do stuff about the Merchant Navy. They're a fun group to talk about. I've got some books that I'm somewhere. Let me go see if I can. I'll be back in a second. Perhaps they're in this file. Can't find it. Sorry. I'm back. I have some books which are big, thick books about the merchant marine in World War II and World War One, and they are lovely books. And I was going to show them all to you all, and if you so you could get them if you wanted. And I cannot, for the life of me, find them either in here or the other bookshelves I have outside. Perhaps they're downstairs. I'll keep hunting them. Danny Freeman, just Clark, Bruce Submarine. Did they know about ANFO explosives in World War II? To an extent. Jeremy, Dr. Clark, if the Montgomery went up, most of the damage would be to the Isle of Grain, South Essex coast, and to the western of Sheppey and the Midway estuary area. There, but also into central London. It would overwhelm the Thames barrier, especially if the Thames barrier wasn't raised. And it probably wouldn't be raised in time. It would overwhelm Thames barrier, and probably you are looking at Canary Wharf getting very, very wet, and large parts of London as well. Carl Casberg, Stephanie Wilson, I don't mind when bombs are found. That means something gets built or renovated. Yeah, it does help. Prolux, did not Japan try to send an air attack on Panama Canal stuff? They were looking into it. They never really actually do it because it's the number of aircraft you get. The Panama Canal zone is going to be quite well protected. There's all sorts of issues. It's not really a good idea. Yeah, I have lived within 10 miles of the wreck for 50 years, and most media suggest it'd be terrible, but locals just take it, look at it, and shrug. It is. It's what you have to do, and I certainly must well live with it. It hasn't gone up yet. Jerison, he returns. Yes, I wasn't away long. I was hunting a book. Well, actually, 3 books. And I can't find them for the life of me, so I'm not sure where they've gone. They are probably looking at me right now. This is the thing that happens with books in my in my library. They are just looking at me and going, And it's not pretentious for me to call it a library. I am surrounded by bookshelves. It's what you call a collection of bookshelves this many. Random. Steve, during a visit to see my son's base in El Centro with my English friends, I took them to town where the marker says we are 19 feet beneath sea level. Told my friends my car was now sub. Yeah, sounds good. Planet 767. Hey Doc, sorry mate. Saw the earlier video today where you discussed the Elcote PTs. Have you or will you also touch on the Higgins PTs? Yes, I will. The Higgins boats were quite cool as well. The Alco ones were the more common one, and they certainly were the far more produced ones, as I said, 326. But the Higgins ones get a reputation of being the tougher, more reliable ones. And it's deserved. It's deservedly so. I might add some stuff into the miscellaneous section in the part 2, especially as it's going to be recorded tomorrow. I can add some extra things in tomorrow. Osprey 28. That was supposed to be an attack on the American West Coast with the I-400s. The I-400s were planned for all sorts of things, and it really wasn't a sensible idea. I preferred it if they spent the I-400s money instead of going for aircraft or these sort of things, aircraft carrying submarines, had gone for use those resources to build some proper long-range submarines with the ability to carry a lot of torpedoes and probably a decent deck gun. And I'm not talking a massive M1 sort of level deck gun or a Surkoff level deck gun. I'm talking about a standard 4-inch or something like that. They would have had a far more potent tool, because they could have had those sitting off the coast of America and causing all sorts of trouble. Okay. Jeff Miller, favourite Dickens story. Sailor on dock asked if he could come on the night's MTB sortie, has his own Lewis gun. Dickens says sure. Later power out, main guns heads useless, Lewis gun saves the day. That doesn't surprise me. Paul Sachs, of course, then they'd have the Summers class to deal with. Yeah, but you know, you can get around them. Yickers, hello, late to the party, starting from the beginning. Enjoy, Yickers. Steam White, yes, Montgomery Shockwave probably take out most windows at East London, possibly. Howard King, I mean, wondering how the different navies approached air-sea rescue during World War II. Right, well, the joy is, if the RAF actually has their own version of motor torpedo boats, variously ones produced by Fairmile, I think, and a couple of them from Vosper. But they also have seaplanes. You have seaplanes that can fly out, land, pick up crew, and come back. And they do use them a lot. In fact, they're still using them in the 1950s. It's one of the biggest losses we have, although helicopters now don't need, of course, to land. They can just hover and pick you up. But, you know, they do have an air-sea rescue going on. Donna Fritz, the USS Des Moines is said to have a rate of fire of 12 8-inch rounds per gun per minute. Is it possible to keep that rate of fire for any reasonable amount of time, or would that destroy the barrel? That's the problem, and the reason why it doesn't. It usually slacks down to about 10 after a while, but 12 it can keep up certainly for quite a while. Carl von Gansberg, well, it depends, of course, on the maintenance. If it's well maintained, yes, it can keep up. If it's not well maintained, then it won't. Carl von Gansberg, Montgomery explosion during the Oklahoma terror attack. Bombing, about 60% of the explosives simply flew away without exploding. So, yeah. Carl Humman, when you eventually leave the history trade, what will your family do with all the books? Curious as you have so many. My plan is not to leave the history trade. I'm hoping to find a way to make it pay for my life. I'm not sure whether it's going to be a conventional academic career. I would like lecturing, and I would like it to be a conventional university academic career to an extent, but I quite like doing the YouTube stuff. I quite like doing the television stuff. I quite like writing books. If I can make all that into an actual viable income stream, maybe if I can win the lottery, then I'll keep it up. If not, then I'll have to work out another way to pay the bills. Who knows? But I'll still keep the books, I think. Longer term, I presume at some point I'm either going to have to make sure I have children who like books, or I'm going to have to donate them to a university when I'm no longer. But that's touch wood, a very, very long time away. A very, very long time away. Night Heron Production. If I heard correctly, you're going to be scratch building a tribal. Word of advice. Looking into getting some blue stuff molding material that can be reshaped. I'm milliput roasting it. Great making models and cast cheap parts. It really helps with my builds. I think that was for Brock, who's building a tribal. He's doing it wooden. Jerrison, Sunderlands were used in the incident when the Chinese shot down the airliner. Yeah, they were. Seeing White took college field trip to see Sandrea's Fault. Love standing over at Sandrea. There's a nice wiring. Sounds lovely. Richard Hughes, at O'Clock, has the latest episode of Bilge Pumps been posted? The latest episode of Bilge Pumps is with the lovely people at Simsec, but they are doing their own special week. Their Trident stuff is coming up this week, and I think possibly part of next week. So Bilge Pumps is either going to be part of that or it's going to be delayed to after it. But either way, we're recording more episodes, so there are going to be lots in there. And that means that there will be, hopefully, there'll be some spares should we ever miss a week for some reason. Donna Fritz, what is realistically the biggest gun you could put on any World War II DD hull? Well, Germans get perilously close to putting 6 inches on them. And honestly, you could possibly put an 8-inch on some of the bigger ones, on the battle class possibly, and those sort of size ones. And Barfleur does make it into World War II, just so you can technically call them a World War II destroyer, but it's being able to use it. You see, the thing is, if you've got a gun that big and it's then stabilizing, it's all down. So honestly, I would go, the biggest I would want for a destroyer in World War II is the 4.5 to 5-inch range, those sort of guns, and especially double mounts. They're really, really helpful because of the rate of fire. A destroyer engagement range is, the rate of fire is going to be critical. Michael Sanderson, there's a decent film about the RAF rescue boats for those in peril. Very entertaining. It is a good movie. Matthew Griffiths, if you were Henderson in the 1930s, would you build anything different under Article 8? And if so, what would it be? There you go, there's Article 8. I would probably build more trawlers than he managed to build, but I would also be tempted, I have to admit, by this Section B to see what I could get away with in terms of an ocean-going escort. Because you could build something really good for up to 2,000 tons. A couple of 4-inch guns. A whole load of depth charges, and no need for speed greater than 20 knots. But he was building those. Those were called sloops. It was Section V that defined the Royal Navy sloops in the 1930s. So basically, I'd have been building more sloops, and he was building those already. I'd have just built more of them. Jerison, Steamwine, I take it the cheese was not damaged by an Italian torpedo. We're still on the cheese. George, Blue Ship Better. Today is the 78th anniversary of the beginning of the Battle of Midway, the turning point in the Pacific during World War II. Never forget. No, we don't, no matter how hard we try. No, seriously, it's one of those battles you shouldn't forget, because the Midway is an interesting battle. Well, to be honest, the rule is your mounts mount more than 4 guns above 3-inch. So you could mount 2 double twin 4-inches. You can mount a double twin 4-inches, a twin 4-inch each end. So you might as well, that's your AA covered. Honestly, you could do a lot on that in terms of sloops and things. George Crab, do you think the IJN should have deployed Yamamoto more aggressively early in Model 2, i.e. sending it with instead of the Congos at Guadalcanal? It's not a repeat question. Thank you for coming, George Crab. George Crab. It's very good to see you. Sorry, my screen has a bit of muck on it, so it's looked like Crab rather than Crab. I think myself deploying Yamamoto more aggressively early in World War II doesn't fix anything for the Japanese. I think if they'd been deploying it more aggressively, sending it with the Congos and the carriers, if it had been available, and I don't think it would have been available, for the attack on Hawaii, and then doing a full air attack, carrying on the air attack, and then closing to gun range and bombarding that out of the port, and then maybe launching an amphibious operation to take Hawaii, that would have been a practical use of things. Because basically, Japan is always going to be outnumbered by the Americans, so they can only win if they can force the Americans to come to them and fight them on their terms. The only point in the Battle of the Pacific that you can force the Americans to have to come to you and fight on your terms is if you take Hawaii. Everything else they can skip past if they don't want to. But Hawaii is in the center of the ocean, and it's from there you can launch attacks on San Francisco and other places. If you take Hawaii, you can start dictating the war to the Americans. Yes, they are going to create tons of resources. Yes, they are going to send everything there. Yes, eventually they are probably going to overwhelm it. But your only chance is that you might be able to defeat them is if you can control where they're going to fight you. And the only place you can do that is either the Japanese homeland islands, which you don't want to find them on, or Hawaii. That's the only option. Sure, Mac, for it to be practical, 5.25 inch, maybe 5.4 inch. No, still they're a bit impractical for a destroyer because it's keeping up the rate of fire with the motion of the motion of the ocean in terms of the destroyer. So it's the destroyer goes backwards is sort of the way it's rocked in the water, and keeping a 5-inch. Yeah, no, I would prefer to keep a 4.5 to 5 inch. It would be so that sort of bracket would be where I'm going rather than over 5 inch. Brockbane, yes, I'm building a toy trapper out of scrap lumber for my son. Just scrap, red oak and pine. Have a laying out. Cool. Shomak, you suffer with RF with anything? Yeah, over 5 inch. Yeah, pretty much. Osprey 28. Brock, do you have any reference material? If he doesn't, I think I could probably find him some. I'm pretty sure I have a 3D scanner of trouble kicking around my computer somewhere. Brockbane, now I'm just going to do it by eye and sometimes check my hider in World of Wars. Well, if you want, Brock, I will make sure some stuff's posted to the Discord. I'm sure I can find something. Shumak, you can eke out a lot out of that. Shumbran, I arrived late. People discussing SS Richard Montgomery and Halifax, but no mention of USS Mount Hood. Yeah, you know, we like the SS Montgomery more. It has a cooler name. But, you know, Mount Hood is something also we just be thinking about. Jeff Beeler, only the Congos had the speed and range to safely hit Guadalcanal in one night. Other BBs too slow to risk air attack. That is the problem. Bishop, Yamamoto saw more action in fiction. It's both in novel and film Harm's Way. Also, of course, Space Battleship Yamamoto. Oh, please. This is why on the Discord I have started a ship anime channel, so it can just be all put there and it doesn't have to be in the general discussion. It just keeps everyone happy that way. Prime Flux, where do you find this Discord? Well, I will post a link to it because I'm in a good, beneficent mood. I have a Discord keep going, and I also keep a Patreon going. And it's thanks to my patrons that I am buying a whole new set of books this month. So some more books are going to be arriving thanks to them. So thank you very much to the patrons. New books, and well, when I say new books, I'm buying a whole lot of second-hand books from various places, but you know. It's very nice of them, so it's made my life very cool. There you go, there's a link. Sure, Mac, your link is still working. Yes, it is. But the question is, do I should have access to it? Yeah, let me just track it down. Sure, Mac. Did. And this is the Sean Mac permalink, which Sean Mac can do. Which is why Sean Mac is a flotilla leader. Jeff, I'll have a chat with SimSec. They're the ones who organise all that. Any chance of an MP3 download of bilge pumps? We'll see. I'll have a chat with SimSec, as I said. Sure, Mac, for Hawaii to be practical, Japan needed to build a much larger merchant fleet. Yes, but conversely, they do have some quite fast merchant ships, including Maru class. So, whilst it's going to need to be a lot of transits, if you think about it, if you take Hawaii, you push the American submarines back that for much further, you push their carrier operations, you push everything back that much further, you extend the American logistics that much further, and to make their supplies of Southeast Asia even more difficult, you have the honest thing that, in the nicest way, you make so many problems for the Americans, you gain yourself an extra 6 to 8 months. Emre Wallace, Bilge Pumps is downloadable off the SimSec site. So yes, if you go to the SimSec site, it is downloadable apparently. So yeah, that's good. I don't go download it for some reason. After having sitting and recorded it and edited it and listened to it usually for about twice the amount of time it took to record it, to edit it, by that point I can recite it off by heart, so I am usually trying to avoid it. Jerison, oh, I found a Kit Kat on my desk. That's nice. Is that a chocolate kind or the fluffy kind? Kingsrook. You should just include Sean Mack's link in the description of the videos. I will do. I will go add it in. I do keep meaning to. Seem like getting to remember old war game we called Space Ducks. Sort of Donald Duck Space Marines. I stay with traditionalists. Give me Warspite any day. Okay. Jeff Beeler, story behind World War I Flower Class. Any double-ended cable class. Okay, I'm leaving the Flower Class story for part 2 of the introduction. And I will answer questions about it in Brew Ships on Sunday. Because there is so many cool stories in there, I want to leave it for the introduction. Because it's going to be a good video. And it's a good thing. And I've got in there the Italian corvettes, the British corvettes, and another corvette, which is quite cool. So there's some quite cool corvettes sitting in there. The plebiscite, Adoskalak. What are your thoughts on the Flower Class? If I missed it, as I said, they are being saved for part 2 of the introduction. And it's quite cool. The Flower Class get us some really cool stuff. M. Ripper Wallace. The player has a link above and can download that way. When it opens and when you just play it. Okay, cool. Brock Payne. I was able to get an MP3 of Bilge Pumps, but it was more difficult than I'd like. Darison, the chocolate kind. Yeah, that's good. Donald Fitz. Did the Japanese have any counters to US subs? I've been told that the US subs cause a lot of damage to the merchant fleet for Japan. They did, and the Japanese really didn't have enough escorts. They just didn't. You know, nice way. If any nation should have been taking advantage of Article 8, it should have been Japan. Seriously, there are so many things there they could have. If they started working on a whole generation of sloops, they'd have been sensible, but they didn't. Osprey 28. Do you have any of the Anatomy of Ship books? I can send you a few of my extra copies. I do have a few. I have a fair number. You know, I'm always happy to talk about extra books, but I think I have a few. You know, it's fun times. I buy a lot of books. I do enjoy them. They are. It's one of the interesting things. It takes me longer to write based off books than National Archives materials, but to be honest, I get it done. Right, I will remind everyone that I am finishing this evening at 8:30 theoretically, which is in 5 minutes, but I'll finish off all the questions. But that's because I'm on Mysteries of the Deep this evening and I want to get downstairs and watch it. And it starts at 9, so I'm sort of aiming to finish. Well, I'm finishing at 8:30, so I will definitely be finished at 9. Jack Ray, I liked the video edit you had the other day in which you left in the declaration that you were recording a video to someone. That was so funny. Yeah. Oh, that was to my mum. We have decided that what we need is a recording sign because my mum keeps wandering in on me recording the videos to ask questions and sort things out because my mum and sister can't go out the house because they're on full shielded lockdown. So I'm the one who goes in and out of the house. So they give me messages and things and ask me to do things. And they just basically come in when they think about it. And I'm sort of going, oh, yeah, we're recording. But no, we sorted it out. So anyway, US seaplane routes, SD or SF to Hawaii to wake up to Midway to Manila, all points of us. Swinging Sparta's North Pacific, multiply the value of any island large enough for seaplanes. Yeah. So if you take out Hawaii, you do cause a lot of issues for them. Daniel Freeman, gunboat HMS Cockchafer. She is in miscellaneous. Jefferson, hi, Dr. Clark's mum. Yeah. She's probably listening downstairs at the moment, but she is there, usually. Paul Sachs, when donuts are accused of... Donitz was accused of unrestricted submarine warfare in Nuremberg. It was dropped because Alan said we quite bluntly did the same thing in the Pacific. Yep. Jeff Beeler, the Canadian corvettes with their colourful ship's badges like... Yeah. The flowers in the corvettes, the castle class. Canadian castles were just wackadoodle. Bishon, do you need to take Hawaii and hold it? Would large commando radio on dockyards do? Could they have taken Midway at the start? They could have taken, if you can get the Japanese Navy and Army to work together and the Army to supply the troops, you could have taken Midway and you could have taken Hawaii at the start. The Japanese had enough troops. They had enough landing ships, and if you take Hawaii, then Midway is going to be completely empty. And you can, if you're doing it at the same time, the Americans can't deal with it because the Americans aren't structured to react. That's the whole thing. Hawaii's the surprise attack. If you manage to mount a big enough surprise, boom. Combine that with a hit on the Panama Canal, and you're in a lot of trouble. If you're America. Sure, Mac. Japan didn't believe that the Americans were cut out for submarine warfare. No, that wasn't the case. The Japanese did believe the Americans were capable of submarine warfare. They just overestimated their ability to deal with submarine warfare with their existing assets. Because they got very, very good in World War I, and then it sort of atrophied. Or atrophied. Is still going on. Emma Paulus, not sure if this has been asked before, but did the treaties have a positive impact on ship design due to working around limitations? Yes, they did. Honestly, there are so many things which that are good things that can happen. JP, I posted links to a couple of war games on Discord. One is Invasion of Oahu. The other is on War on the Far East in the 1930s. Oh, cool. I'll have a look at them a bit. The new IKB 4472. Didn't Japan have to build a purpose-built ships just to transport the turrets for the MS battleships? I think they did, yes, because they didn't have the infrastructure to move them around. Drac does a very good video, and I'm not sure when it came out, on production and the realities of building ships. And just because you have the facilities for great turret manufacturer in one place and a great shipyard in another, doesn't mean you can get those two to work together, because sometimes it's onerous to take the stuff from there to there. Jeff Beeler, castles are not as cool looking as rivers. Why the latter was favoured over the former, I think. Yeah, probably, but I like the castles. Plus, rivers are frigates, so they're slightly tougher, slightly harder, slightly bigger. And they're slightly more war standards. The castles are corvettes. Osprey 28. It's his "So you want to build a navy" video. Yeah. Basically, the realities are Britain has quite an advantage with Vickers and the setup in Newcastle and various other places around the country, in that we have some fairly good to very good weapons manufacturers and other systems manufacturers, quite close to some fairly good to very good shipyards. It's quite lucky. But it's also not an accident it's turned out that way, because due to the Napoleonic Wars, etc., our shipyards areas had been centres of industry in port areas. So industry tends to breed more industry. So the industry had grown up around them. And if you've already got a thriving armaments industry, in an area, it will tend to attract other armaments industries. So it tends to have armaments production going on there. And that armaments production has grown up because you need to supply guns to the ships which were being built there. Okay, so then you have them quite close together. When you start trying to build these things artificially or, you know, in a shorter period of time, you end up with more problems. The plebiscite. Wouldn't the assembling of a large amphibious force cause the Yanks to react differently than just to carry a force pre-Pearl Harbor? Not really, because the Japanese were quite commonly moving whole corps, if not army groups, in terms of equivalent sizes, around for Manchuria and China and all sorts of things. And they were fighting a war against Russia at this time. So honestly, well, they had been fighting a war against Russia until quite recently. In 1939, the war ends against Russia. 1940, or maybe 1940. 1939, 1940 time. The war the war sort of between Japan and Russia, the Russo-Japanese War, another one, ends. And so in nicest way, actually, it's almost easier for them to move troops around without the Americans getting worried than it is for them to move carriers around from the Americans getting worried. Thanks to the Americans focusing on where their battleships were, though, they probably would really have not noticed what was going on. Yep, it is now about 8:30, so I'm going to say any last questions. Thank you very much to everyone for watching. Thank you to everyone who's subscribed. Thank you to everyone who's done super chats. Thank you to everyone who's a patron. Thank you to everyone who's bought a book and all those things. Thank you very much, and take care. Right. So, plebiscite, the US was completely blindsided. You need to make maximum out of that as in Japan. Yeah, that's the point. If you've got America blindsided, why do half measures? Michael Sandler, e.g. Vickers Armstrong Armament Works being just up the river from Swan Hunter's Navy Yard. Yeah, exactly. Take care. Have a nice evening. Thank you to everyone for being here. Have a good evening, and as always, it's been a great pleasure. Take care.